your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan. It is always a pleasure to come your way. I know. I say that all the time. But it's true. I love doing this, folks. And I love having guests on, like my guest today, very special guest, Nelson Aspen. And he has a fascinating conversation he's going to have with us today about not only his latest book, but also some of the other work that he does. And it's probably to him not work. Nelson, thank you for traveling as far as you did, all the way across the country, coast to coast, coming to us all the way from New York City. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. And I did travel very far. It was a long walk from the office into the dining room where I'm sitting now.
How interesting. Mine is from upstairs in the kitchen to downstairs in my studio.
Yeah, I love my office, but I associate it with work. So I wanted to make this a non-work conversation. So I've moved to the dining room.
I love it. And will the waiter or waitress be serving you during the program with your favorite?
You're speaking to the waiter.
Oh, I see. Well, I love the title of the book, especially when we start thinking more in the material world of where is it? Could we get some? Your book is entitled Dancing Between the Raindrops with Happy Ever After. I am fascinated by that because I don't know. See, has always been my struggle, whether it came to a particular job, and I mean where I would go in and work 9 to 5 or what have you, or certain projects, or a period of time where, okay, what's the end game? Where is the end? And every job I've ever had, there was never an end to it. In other words, I would go home at night and come back and pick up right where I left off. There was never any finishing it, because I guess if there was, then the company would shut down because they wouldn't be needed anymore. In our lives, though, that's true too, isn't it? That there is no end point. It's just, okay, this phase has ended and a new phase has begun, right? So when you talk about happily ever after, once upon a time they lived happily ever after. Life isn't that way, whether we're talking the material world or even the esoteric or more metaphysical or spiritual world.
Well, after a 30-year career in the entertainment industry, I can say that as far as show business goes, all good things come to an end. I enjoyed my last steady job was a 20-year gig as the entertainment reporter for Australia's #1 morning show. So I was on the air 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. getting to report not only the latest entertainment news, but cover every significant event, interview every A-list celebrity. So that was a cool job. And when that job did come to an end, because nothing is forever in show business, and that's okay,
Hmm.
because you can't get to the next job and next cool thing until you finish the first cool thing. So I'd had a lot of people asking me for an autobiography. And my hesitation was that I hadn't kept journals. I hadn't recorded all of my achievements over the course of a lifetime. And if you're going to write an autobiography, you'd better be very, very accurate, I think, at least in my opinion, as a journalist, I think you should be accurate. So I decided what I would do is I would lightly fictionalize it. Rather than
Hmm.
it be the story of Nelson Aspen, I would give myself an alter ego and tell all of my stories through his eyes. So then came the task of what am I going to call this story? Because if it's not going to be Nelson Aspen, what will the title be? And I'm glad you responded to the Dancing Between the Raindrops, because as I set out to start this novel, which has turned into 3 novels, and I've just completed the trilogy, the thought of my beginnings really started when I was 17 and moved to New York City. I came from the farmlands of Pennsylvania, and I was determined I was going to be on Broadway, and of course I would have to move to New York City. It was 1980, so Hell's Kitchen, where I was moving to, was not a glamorous destination. However, it was the Emerald City as far as I was concerned at 17. I would point out that in 1980, the drinking age, the legal drinking age in New York was 18. So at 17, I wasn't limited by anything. I could go to New York and live as a young adult, which I did. But I would go home to visit my folks, and my dad would say, he'd sort of shake his head and say, I don't know how you survive. It's like you're dancing between the raindrops.
Mm.
And that always stuck with me, especially in the 80s, the era of AIDS, a
Mm.
lot of tumult going on especially in New York City. And so the first book takes my life in the 80s in New York City, dancing between the raindrops. Would there be a second book? Wasn't sure. Second book, there was a demand for it. So I covered my 2 decades in Los Angeles and called it Dancing Between the Raindrops, the Hollywood years.
Mm.
And finally, in 2012, I moved back to New York City, completely content with being alone but not lonely. And much to my surprise, I fell in love, got married, and hence the third book in the series, Dancing Between the Raindrops, Happily Ever After. So here we go. It doesn't mean that my life is over, far from it. But I think the book series is over. The trilogy is sufficient.
And it is somewhat autobiographical.
Very, 99%.
Yeah.
Only the names have been changed to protect the guilty.
I see. Yes, indeed. I remember that line from Dragnet. Yes, indeed. The television series that starred Joe Friday. I actually worked with a guy back in Santa Barbara who sounded and acted all the entire persona of Joe Friday in that series. It
The
was
great
so,
Jack Webb. I thought
yeah,
of him the other night because I watched Sunset Boulevard, and he
yeah,
has a small supporting role in Sunset Boulevard.
yeah. Oh, and the thing is he is this friend of mine. His name is Mike. He is the epitome of the facts, just the facts, ma'am. That's what's interesting. Now, I have you reached or are you pending to reach a dozen books released, a dozen publications?
I have my next book, which comes out for Earth Day, April
Yes.
22nd. It's a children's book, a far cry from my other titles. The other 11
Mhm.
are for grown-ups only. But my 12th book, and I'd like to say it should be the end. It's like having 12 children. That's enough. I can enjoy the 12 that I have. But the 12th book for Earth Day is called The Magnificent Mr. and Mrs. Maple. And it is the almost true story of my garden here in Harlem, New York. And it's to teach kids, ostensibly kids, about the fact that families don't always have to be under the same roof. You can
Hmm.
be a loving and intact family, even if you're not living under the same roof. And interestingly, a friend of mine who is a New York Times best-selling author is a gerontologist, specializes in handling older folks. And she wrote the foreword to the book for me. And it was as we were working on that together that I realized the message of the book about families and separation speaks just as much to older folks as it does to kids who may be dealing with a parent who's outside of the house or siblings that may be away or what have you. But older folks, I certainly know from my own parents, and the challenges that they went through when it was time for assisted living and giving up the house that they loved so dearly. So those are universal and ageless themes.
Hmm.
And, so I'm proud of that. So The Magnificent Mr. and Mrs. Maple, my 12th and hopefully final chapter.
Well, it's interesting because one of the characters I created back in the 80s, 1980s, when I was working for a station in Phoenix, and there was this health food store that was going to do some advertising with us, and they gave us a list of some of the stuff that they sold, and I came up with this character, old guy, by the name of Elmo P. Scrunk. And I tell you what, he just really, really liked their fresh bread. It's just sliced bread, and on and on and on. And I've always had fun with that kind of stuff. And now I'm sitting here looking at you, and I'm going, do I really want to say that? Do I really want to say, you're looking good for a young guy, and me being an old guy, and not that we have to reveal ages. I don't have a problem with being coming up on 66 years of age. I don't feel it. I still feel 17. Now, that's on the inside. The body, on the other hand, says, now be careful. Be very careful. Your body is not 17 years old. Okay. But it seems to me that as we get older, and you've got me beat by 11 books, and mine took almost 20 years to write.
Well, you've got me beat by 3 years.
Seriously. No. Well, you and I are, as I've been told, well preserved. We come from good stock, as they say.
They say that alcohol will do that.
I love that. Nelson Aspen is my guest. The website, folks, is nelsonaspen.com. We'll be linked to that. We hope that you will go to his website, nelsonaspen.com. Get yourself a copy of the latest release, and the new one, of course, for Earth Day will be coming out as well. But again, please avail yourselves of Dancing Between the Raindrops, Happily Ever After, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Reverend Dr. D. He is Nelson Aspen, and it is really a pleasure to have you here on the program. And we were chatting a little bit about our adventures. I remember as a kid growing up, and then of course in my first marriage, never really thought too much about traveling abroad. As far as my first wife is concerned, we came to California a few times, SeaWorld, that kind of thing. Never left the States, other than to take a cruise. Her parents paid for a what do they call it? A Mexican Riviera cruise for 7 days. And it was a lot of fun. There's no question about it. So that was the first time I'd ever left the United States, if you want to call that leaving. But then with my second wife, my present wife, back in 2002, following a year of her going through cancer diagnosis, surgery, treatment, and so forth, we decided to get married. We did, had a ceremony in our backyard there in Phoenix. And then our honeymoon took us to Ireland. Seriously, Ireland? I'm curious about your travels, because I'm sure people are going to want to know, where have you been? You obviously are currently living in New York City, and you've, as you mentioned, coming from, what'd you say, farm country in Pennsylvania?
Yep, and 22 years in Los Angeles.
And LA, yeah, where I am northeast of and a mile high now. I'm curious as to your travels and how important it was for you as you look back to maybe take those trips or to experience other places around the world.
I'm a big believer in travel, and I was raised a bit of a globetrotter. My parents would always take me along. So when they would take their holidays, I went with them.
Hmm.
Not always my siblings, but I always went with them. So I grew up traveling the world. I still have my first little passport photo, which is kind of fun to see the progression of that. But I have always said yes to opportunity. I think that's great career advice. I think it's great personal advice. It can be great romantic advice. But taking a shot, trying things. Not every personality fits that model, but my personality fits that. So I've always been a globetrotter and one to just jump on a plane or jump on a cruise and have passport will travel. In fact, my spouse lives in Hong Kong. So we have a relationship of honeymoons, and that's how we meet. We have New York 3 times a year, we have Hong Kong once a year, and then the rest of the time we're on the road traveling. And my reporting career over 30 years, I reported for a Canadian show, lots of American shows, of course, but a Canadian show, an Irish show for 7 years, 2 different British shows for 10 years, and an Australian show for 20 years, and and 2 different New Zealand shows for 10 years. And all of these places would encourage me to come and join them in the studio. In addition to the usual was reporting by satellite. So you mentioned Ireland, and I had 2 marvelous trips to Ireland. I'm a Titanic fanatic. In fact, I've written a book about the Titanic, and I host a Titanic themed podcast called
Hmm.
Titanic Talk. But going to Ireland, which was the birthplace of Titanic, was an especial thrill for me. And getting to look around there. And now, coming up this October of 2026, I'm leading a 2-week tour around Ireland. So when you go to nelsonaspen.com, you can click on travel. And if you want to go, I'm getting a small group together, very bespoke, eclectic group of Globetrotters. And we fly into Dublin on October the 3rd, and we begin our 13-day journey all around the island with amazing experiences, just our little group. And it culminates in Belfast, Northern Ireland, with a 2-day Titanic experience. In Belfast is where the Titanic was built. And I released my Titanic book last year on the anniversary of Titanic sinking, April
Hmm.
15th, and went to the Titanic Museum in Belfast. And I can't say enough about it. You don't have to be a Titaniac to enjoy that world-class museum. So yeah, anybody who's interested in traveling with me, that'll be my next major adventure.
That's right. Come on down and enjoy the island. I tell you, we have not been there in the spring, summer, or fall. Only in the winter. We went twice. The second time was 2004, um, end of January. It was for my wife's birthday on the February the 2nd, which was rather significant. Uh, I'm I'm just going to throw this out there. We went to a place called Bridget's Well, and I believe it was in Kildare, County Kildare. And I took a bunch of pictures of my wife around the well, and down in the well. I took pictures of the interior of the well with the water in it. I kid you not. I look at it and look at it and look at it, and my wife will, to her dying day, state that there is a fairy in the photograph. It was digital. It was a digital camera, I believe, and I zoom in on it, and it's like it can't be anything else. It's not a leaf. Doesn't look like a leaf to me. Or that's a
Hmm.
pretty creative leaf pattern there. What are your thoughts when it comes to the more? I like to. There are several different words that I use. The more esoteric, metaphysical, and spiritual aspects, not just of Ireland, which we could spend all program talking about, but in terms of our life and living. As you had mentioned, I had mentioned your name incorrectly, and you said, "Well, that was a previous life." Is that something that you do believe in and have kind of tapped into in some way, shape, or form? But talk to us a little about your philosophy, if you will, from that standpoint.
Well, I'm a rather pragmatic individual. However, sometimes when you're presented with evidence, you have to open your mind to other things. And I am not one to be prone toward I don't know. I guess you'd call it reincarnation or the metaphysical paranormal. I'm much more of a realist. However, from the time I was about 8 years old, not only did I have a intense fascination with Titanic, I had a series of recurring dreams.
Mm.
I was always constantly, and people were mistaking my name. Instead of Nelson, they would call me Milton, which was not, that is not a name that was much in use after 1963 when I was born. But I got used to it. People mistaken. And to this day, I go into a Starbucks and I order something and they go, Milton, your latte is ready. But anyway, so as the years rolled on, it became more of a fascinating puzzle to figure out what was going on.
Mm.
And there was a very obscure, he's not well known, first class passenger on Titanic named Milton Long. And back when I was growing up, there was no Google. You had to go to a bookstore. You had to go to a library. You did not have information in the palm of your hand. And sometime in the early 80s, I found a book that was detailing, it was an eyewitness account of Milton's death. And it was perfectly juxtaposed to the recurring dream I'd had since childhood.
Wow.
So I began to think I must be Milton Long, reincarnated from Titanic. And then in 1985, you might recall, that was the year that Dr. Robert Ballard discovered the wreck of the Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
It was groundbreaking. It was front page news. He was on the cover of every magazine. For all those decades, Titanic's location had been a mystery. And I was obsessed. I was in my late 20s, mid 20s, that with I was even younger. 85, I would have been 22.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to get in touch with Dr. Ballard. Another thing that they don't have anymore, a phone book. I got
Mm-hmm.
out the phone book and I tracked him down through the US Navy to the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute in Massachusetts. Happens to be where Milton came from, by the way. So I don't know who I thought I was, other than Milton Long, but I dialed the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. The operator answered, and I said, "This is Nelson Aspen. I would like to speak with Dr. Robert Ballard, please." She's put me on hold, and a moment later, Dr. Ballard himself came on the line and said, "Hello, Milton?"
No.
And I knew at that moment that it wasn't just a flibberty-gibbety flight of fancy. So there's very limited information about Milton's life, but my book, Kindred Spirits, A Titanic Tale, tells the story as I have forensically put it together of Milton's life before he got onto Titanic. And then I reimagine what it would be like if Milton could live in the current day as he does through me. And the Edwardian era of 1912, it was repressive to say the least. We saw that with Kate Winslet's character in James Cameron's movie. But in my book, it's for all of his first class privilege, Milton was a very unhappy individual. So there are thousands of stories to be told about Titanic's victims and survivors. Even the survivors didn't get off scot-free. That kind of cataclysmic 9/11 style world event did not give you a happily ever after. It gave you an ever after of survivor's guilt, of PTSD. So there are many stories to be told about Titanic's orbit universe. So I've told Milton's, and people like it. It's now in development as a film of its own, and that's exciting. So that's one of my other favorite baby books.
Mm. Incredible. It's one of the interesting things that people do have that experience. They'll be called something for years and years and years and years. They have no idea why, and it's just because the people who are I've been referred to on a number of occasions as David. It just sticks in my head. I've never researched it. I've never figured out where it comes from, and I have trouble remembering my dreams. I remember a few of them that were rather profound, but it's like I actually have to ask the universe, I want to remember my dreams. Please help me remember. I want to remember my dreams. And the latest one that I had was back in January of this year. And it was really, really rather interesting. And I actually decided, okay, write down as much as you know, write down as much as you know, that kind of thing. So it's to me that's another conversation that I have had with people who deal in dream interpretation. And my favorite dream interpreters are those who don't actually do that. They actually lead you through the process of understanding your dreams because only you can actually interpret them and know what the symbolism is, if there is any. I've had one with my grandmother on my mother's side after her passing, and it was more of a Richard, everything is okay, I'm okay kind of thing. It was really quite incredible. We're going to continue our conversation here. We're going to continue talking, I should say, with our very special guest, not Milton, but
Mhm.
Nelson Aspen. We hope that also you will consider the possibility of checking out his latest work. And the work we're talking about, or at least that we started talking about here on the program, and that has to do with dancing between the raindrops, happily ever after, available, I'm sure, on Amazon. You can probably go through his website, which is nelsonaspen.com, and we'll continue this conversation as we continue here, as always, on Tell Me Your Story. Reverend Dr. D and Nelson Aspen, and we're talking about dancing between the raindrops. I have to wonder sometimes if it wouldn't be better to, obviously, the raindrops are a metaphor for the challenges in life, the obstacles sometimes. And at the same time, I'm thinking, sometimes getting hit with a raindrop ain't a bad thing because it kind of wakes you up saying, oh, okay, I better turn this way to avoid the next one, that kind of thing. I have a wonderful Vedic astrologer friend, Nelson, who in our conversations, I kind of put together the metaphor that what he provides is this roadmap. Now, not a roadmap telling your future or anything like that, but it's like a roadmap. Let's say you have a map from coast to coast, and you lay it out on the table, and you want to go from Los Angeles to New York. What his Vedic astrology does is it tells you about some of the conditions you may run into along the way, whether it be weather or certain maybe interpersonal relationships along the way, and the ways in which you can, shall we say, protect yourself, okay, through different things. Doesn't mean that you avoid those conditions like the rain, unless you want to divert down a different road, you could do that. Okay, maybe you should take an umbrella. Or if you're driving a convertible, might be a good idea during this phase, put the top up, okay, and so forth. And that's kind of the way I look at the dreams sometimes, is that they're kind of guiding us and telling us things that we would not ordinarily know. And it ties into our promotion here on Tell Me Your Story, Nelson, of getting people to spend some time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, going within and listening to and following the prompting of that still small voice. Share with us a little bit about your inner journey in that regard. How trusting are you? How have you developed that over the years in terms of that still small voice, intuition, if you want to call it the voice of the divine, however you deem that?
The greatest gift I've had in my life was having two wonderfully supportive parents who loved me and encouraged me and trusted me. And really, it didn't, au contraire, I was going to say, it didn't mean they didn't discipline me. I mean, we had a somewhat strict household, but the gift my parents gave me was self-confidence. It took me, you know, through school. I had some tough times, as most adolescents do, but I'm a tremendously confident person, and that's deliberately. And all roads point right back to the support and love that I got from my mom and dad. And uh, they also were tremendously funny. Up until their dying breaths, they were funny, engaging, larger than life people that made friends. They were friend collectors, and I've become the same way. And the only reason I don't miss them more than I do, and I mean, of course, I miss them. They were my two best friends. Is because I'm so much like them. I cannot look in the mirror without seeing my mother. I can't open my mouth without hearing my father. I went to a 2-year-old neighbor's birthday party over the weekend, and I left there sort of shaking my head, going, "Oh my God, I have become my father." I was handing out $2 bills to all the little kids. I was telling long drawn out stories. And it's lovely. You shouldn't be if you have great parents, you shouldn't be afraid to become your parents. So yeah, that they have become sort of my religion. That I look to them, I talk to them, I feel them all around me. And in all of my books, my protagonists always have great parents who are very thinly disguised versions of Big Nelson and Joyce Ann.
Hmm. Well, I'm kind of the same way as you. My mother is still alive. She'll be 91 this year. My father passed a couple of years ago, and sometimes I hear my father's voice, or not so much voice, but his words coming out of my mouth, that kind of thing.
Funny how that works.
Oh yeah, and I love that. It's fascinating to begin to better understand the connections that we have with the people that are currently around us. I don't know if you're familiar with a Dr. Newton and his work in LBL, or Life Between Lives research. And the research that he did, and I've read 2 or 3 of his books on the case studies that he performed on the hypnosis, under hypnosis, and I've done this myself. He talks about how we are a member of a cluster of, we'll call them entities on the other side. And that when we come into this world, we connect with many of those in our cluster. Some very close, like, husbands, wives, and so forth, parents, siblings, friends, and so forth. And then some are more distant, they're acquaintances, or we pass them walking on the street. And it's fascinating when you start to put all of those things together, isn't it?
I don't know that individual, but I mention in Kindred Spirits, a Titanic tale, I mention a book that I discovered in my journey to uncover more about my possible past life. I think it was by a doctor, is it David or Hugh Sutcliffe? And the title of the book is You Were Born Again to Be Together. And the premise being that all of the significant relationships that you have in your life, whether it's a lover, a family member, an antagonist, maybe it's an
Mhm.
abuser in your life, somebody, it doesn't have to be a positive person, but just the important people in your world were actually an important person in a previous life, and you were born again to work it out. You're working things out with people from the life before and the life before that and before that. And it's an interesting concept. Whether you ascribe to it or not, it's fascinating to read, and it makes you imagine, like, oh, well, why am I having conflict with this individual? What could it have been in another universe?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm open to it all. And as I said when we started this conversation, sometimes, like the recurring dream, or somebody addressing you by a different name repeatedly, sometimes, or Dr. Robert Ballard answering the phone and going, "Hello, Milton." There's some inescapable things that present themselves, and you can't deny the evidence.
Exactly. That's really the key right there, is you cannot deny the evidence. And I know there are a lot of people that try. They will use their own personal doctrine and dogma, the beliefs that they have been given. I loved an interview that I did many years ago. I was working for a Christian station, and I was interviewing a gentleman by the name of John Fisher. He was a musician back in those days and he grew up in the Jesus movement, for example. And he was sharing a story that he shared in at that time, his latest book, where he was living in New England, and it was fall and the leaves had all fallen. And he's sitting in his, I love this phrase, his lonely writer's garret, and
Mhm.
he's looking out the window. And the thought came to him, the question came to him, is what I believe what I was told to believe, or what I truly believe? And I've shared with one of my guests who presented a particular idea, my perspective on that idea. And he says, well, let me give you a little different take on that. And he did. And I listened and I pondered for only a few seconds because silence is a killer, as you know, in radio, let alone television. And I said, well, there goes another one of my straw huts up in flame. And I will gladly burn them all to the ground, so to speak, to start over if that's what it takes. Because when I was 21, someone told me, when I was kind of getting my comeuppance, it is better to begin in doubt and end in certainty than begin in certainty and end in doubt. And I would consider myself a metaphysical agnostic. I'm searching. I don't know, but I'm trying to understand. I know what I believe, and I know that my beliefs have changed. What about you?
Remember back in the old days when we'd read the horoscope in the newspaper in the
Yeah.
morning?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
believe it used to say, I maybe I'm wrong, but I believe it said under the title, your daily forecast, it said for entertainment purposes only. Like even that had to be disclaimed.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
like in every book or movie, it says the characters are, any resemblance between these characters and real people is purely coincidental.
Mm.
Uh, and gosh, as a reporter, how many times have I used the word alleged? You have to. I mean, you just have to
Yeah.
protect yourself with the word alleged. So that's why I say the world is full of miracles. You have to be open to them to recognize them. You can spin a miracle to any way you want to. You can say, oh, well, that was just good luck, or maybe that was the hand of God, or maybe that was an angel or a fairy or whatever. But I think as long as you acknowledge that it's good.
Hmm.
That's what I try to do. I grew up Episcopalian. My brother's an Episcopal priest, but I went to a Catholic high school. My in-laws are Jewish. I've got a little bit of everything. I live in New York City. It's a melting pot. There's something for everyone. But I believe in the golden rule. If you can just do unto others, then you're going to be fine. And as
Yeah.
I keep a gratitude journal. I don't know where I'm supposed to be tomorrow at 4 p.m. But I do manage to write down 5 things a day. It says a book of blessings, and I've been doing that for 20 years. I don't do it every day, but I do it most days.
Mm.
So I figure if you appreciate the good things and uh, just do unto others, then you're in good shape. Whatever your affiliation may be.
Interesting. It is a conversation we're having here with Nelson Aspen. NelsonAspen.com is the website. And Dancing Between the Raindrops, Happily Ever After is the title of his latest work as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. And this is Tell Me Your Story. I am Reverend Dr. D. He is, I almost said Dennis, Nelson Aspen. Now you're going to have to research who Dennis is. Hey, going back to the Titanic, I saw a documentary on some new evidence that is, again, it's speculation, allegedly, using the word, that the Titanic sinking was no accident. Based upon,
There are a million
yeah,
conspiracy theories about
yeah.
Titanic, and that's one of them. And that it was substituted with its sister ship, the Olympic, and it was insurance purposes. But yeah, hey, it keeps the memory alive. People love a conspiracy theory, and because it happened before we have the forensic evidence that we have today, it's easy to come up with theories and speculation and all of that kind of stuff. What I think is fascinating is the Titan implosion, the submersible that tragically killed its 5 occupants a couple of years ago, diving down to the wreck. What the juxtaposition of that story is that the Titanic is still killing people 100 years later, uh, victims of the same problems, which is man's hubris, the fact that, oh well, I can't possibly be hurt, and I've got all this money, so I'm going to put myself in a tin can and dive to the bottom of the ocean. And also a sort of blind faith in technology. Those were hubris and blind faith in technology were two of the factors that led to the Titanic's demise. No matter what conspiracy theory you want to believe, those are undeniable. And with the Titan implosion, it was much the same. So the more things change, the more they stay the same, and we seem to never learn the lessons of the past.
Isn't that interesting? I even raised that statement that you hear often, that those who refuse to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. To
Hmm.
which one of my guests said, "Learn what?" And I'm going, really? That's your question? Learn what? Learn not to repeat it.
Was
That's
this
the
a very
point.
young guest?
It may have
Must have
been.
been.
It's crazy, isn't it? And the reality is, the sad fact is that we seem to be doing that over and over again, even in the times in which you and I are living now. It's like, wait a
Yep.
minute, I saw this in a documentary about how many years ago, and in this country, and in that country, and in another country. And then the historical record says, oh, that happened in this place and that place. It's like, holy
There's
mackerel.
something very bittersweet. My parents each lived to be 93 years old. They died three and a half years apart. But they had good long lives. Not long enough. I mean, 93 sounds good until you're 92. But on paper, good long lives. However, sometimes when I turn on the news, and I still report regularly to a British news outlet, and I do hard news. I'm not doing entertainment news anymore. Yesterday I was reporting on the plane crash at LaGuardia
Hmm.
and the Bill Cosby multi-million dollar settlement to one of his sexual abuse victims. So, I mean, I run the gamut of, and not always pleasant or fun reporting. However, when I see the news these days, I guess it makes me a true old fart. But when I see the news now, I'm grateful that my parents aren't around to see it because I think they would be heartbroken by the state of the world. And I have to remind myself that these troubling times are really the good old days for the kids. The people who are children now will remember 2026 as this sort of halcyon time. Oh, things were good back in 2026. So I try and keep that in perspective. Having grown up in the 60s where my, older brothers and sisters were out there picketing against the Vietnam War and thinking how terrible the establishment was. Hey, it was bliss for me. It was all Brady Bunch and Partridge Family.
Yeah, or you and me both. Matter of fact, that was my first album I bought, was the Partridge Family album with the bus design on the cover. I
Yeah.
still, believe it or not, I still have that album.
Yeah, I was like, because with so many older brothers and sisters and older parents, I had all the vinyl going. Like I had Herb Alpert, I
Yeah.
had Connie Francis.
Mhm.
I had the old albums, which gave me an appreciation for old music. I was the
Oh,
only 12-year-old that could sing every word of "Who's Sorry Now," uh, "I'll Go My Way by Myself," "Bye Bye Blackbird." So
oh yeah.
my
It's
formative years were spent with vinyl.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And of course, I happen to be an audio physician. In other words, I do archival work, and I will take someone's vinyl or mylar tape, if you will, and I will convert it to digital so that they can listen to it again for the first time. I actually received a clear green 78 album or record that was sent to me by one of my customers, and I didn't have a 78 player. So I kind of thought, well, what if it's not exactly the same because 45 times 2 is 90, but what if I was to go ahead and play it at 45 and then pitch it up 50% or something? And I played with that and it came out. I couldn't believe it. And I was actually listening to a recording that went as far back as the 30s because it was in those days that they had those little booths that you'd put, I don't know, a nickel or a quarter, whatever the cost was. And you could record for maybe 2 minutes, a minute and a half to 2 minutes or something. I love doing that stuff and I love hearing those things. A matter of fact, this one gentleman sent me these reel to reels We go back to Ireland all of a sudden, and it was his grandmother with one of the thickest Irish brogues I had ever heard. It was
Oh.
wonderful. Now, here's the beautiful thing for me is I still have those digital recordings on my computer, as well as having sent them to the individuals. It's amazing when we start getting nostalgic, but at the same time, we take a look at what's going on in the world and we say, well, gee, this is similar to that event and that event and that event. And when I take a look, for example, at our politics, and this is in a general sense, not going down any specific road, what I see and what I have seen since the 70s when I started sort of observing was we're making no progress because we get one side that kind of controls things for a little while and they do things their way. Then the other side comes along and then they get control and do things their way and undo everything of the previous. And this goes back and forth and back and forth. And it's almost like watching the pendulum in a grandfather clock. There's nothing accomplished. It's just swinging back and forth,
Except the
back,
passage of time.
other than the passage of time. And that's where when I talk with people about their spiritual walk, about the philosophy that they live by today as compared to what they lived by when they were kids growing up. I mean, I was born and raised Roman Catholic. And now I consider myself a metaphysician. I still love the church because I love the ritual, the ceremony, and the tradition. What about you?
Well, I as I said earlier, I sort of ascribe to my own religion, which is to be good to others and to count your blessings. What I've started doing more recently is because I'm sleep challenged. Might not surprise you to find out I don't sleep very well, but I rather because I've tried decades of tricks and medications and remedies and all sorts of things to help myself stay asleep. Falling asleep is easy. Staying asleep is not. But now when I wake up, I pray. And that's what I do because it doesn't involve me turning on the lights. It doesn't involve me waking up too much to read a book. And I do that, and I pray in many ways, mostly just talking. I try and recall prayers from my childhood or whatever, and that helps me. I feel like that's a spiritually healthy way to fall asleep. It sure beats a Xanax. So I do that. And then, my in-laws are Jewish, and so twice a year I find myself celebrating the high holidays with my Jewish in-laws, and I'm very comforted by the Jewish religion in terms of its Old Testament. Because to me, the Old Testament is, from my growing up, Bible school, Sunday school stories, and so there's a familiarity and a nostalgia to that, and it's different. It's exotic because I don't speak Hebrew. It's a different world that I get to observe. So just as I took a theology course, I'm interested in all religions. So that's sort of where I am, and I enjoy I enjoy being comforted, and religion is supposed to comfort you, and sometimes when you need it, it's always there. You can just pull it out and wrap it around like a blanket.
It's one of the interesting things with working as I did for 15 years back in the 80s, early 90s for a Christian station and the criticisms of all of the different sects, including Catholicism. And I got to the point finally where I said, wait a minute. If what they are doing increases their faith and their belief in, say, a higher power and gets them through this moment and this hour and this day and this week and so forth, then who are we to pass judgment? And I'm hoping that people will hopefully make a shift there. Nelson Aspen is my guest. We are talking about a lot of different things that are associated with this gentleman who is an author living in New York and having a great time, having lived in Los Angeles for a while as well, and has a book called Dancing Between the Raindrops, Happily Ever After, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Nelson Aspen, my guest, nelsonaspen.com. Nelson, I want to thank you for being a part of what we're doing here to hopefully educate people, enlighten people, and inform people as well about the work that you're doing and how you, through your work, are working to sort of, in your own way, change the world for the better for the people who read your books and associate with you and who may even know you from some of the television appearances you've had over the years. And we really appreciate your appearing here on the program.
The pleasure was mine, and I greatly appreciate the hospitality. Anybody these days, anybody can host a podcast, right? But it's the true meaning of a host is someone who engages you, makes you feel welcome, carries on a conversation. You've certainly done that. So I recognize it, and I thank you for it.
Oh, well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. I have three final questions. I
Okay.
ask all of my guests.
Okay.
I'll ask those of you, but first I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. That's 9 programs, different guests in each one, different subjects in each one, and we hope that you'll join us at those times, streaming live at richarddugan.com with podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. We're on YouTube and Rumble, and also expanding to some other video sites as well. And we hope that you'll subscribe as well as click notification. We hope you'll get a copy of my book, Choices, 5 Steps for Life. It is available on Amazon, as I'm sure Nelson's is as well. And it is available in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle. We also hope that you can maybe help us out financially. Leave us a tip. Our tip jar, it's called PayPal. And so if you can do that, go to PayPal. And if you want to send us something, put in my email address, richard@richarddugan.com. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, please take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place that I mentioned no one else can get to, and spend some time listening to that still small voice and following the promptings as well. And with that, we go to our final 3 questions for a very special guest. And those 3 questions are, number 1, who is Nelson Aspen?
Well, according to Google, I'm an award-winning entertainment journalist and author who currently resides in New York City.
Okay. What gets you up in the morning?
Anything, any slight sound, ray of light, thought, dream, brainstorm, or ache or pain. And nothing. The harder question is what keeps you in bed. I am like a racehorse. That I have been told I am a racehorse in the morning.
Mm. And finally, you might get this movie reference. What was your best day?
I guess I'll just say July 1st, 1963, because that started it all. And I arrived at 6:59 p.m. because I was determined not to miss happy hour.
Nelson, this has been fabulous. I want to thank you so much. And we look forward to your latest release that comes out on Earth Day. And it is, again, the magnificent Mr. and Mrs. Maple. And we look forward to that. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for being in my life and letting me be in yours. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.